Hello and welcome to CIO Leadership Live Australia. I'm Kathy O'Sullivan, Editor-in-Chief for CIO in APAC. My guest today is Will Everett, Director of Seven West Media's Product Solutions team. Will leads the product strategy, innovation and technology transformation for Seven News and the 7 Plus streaming service, and has featured numerous times in our CIO 50 Australia. Welcome, Will. How are you today?
I'm great, thank you, and great to be here.
Great to see you again. And we're going to be chatting a lot about streaming today, which is definitely one of my favorite topics when it comes to technology. But bring us back. Tell us a little bit about your career journey. How did you end up in technology in the first place?
Certainly, I really started off doing a computer science degree back in the UK, and from that did the graduate program at Fujitsu. My wife was in kind of a software engineer as well, and literally we kind of gave it all up and moved to New Zealand. And that's where I became the kind of founding CTO and head of development for stuff.co.nz. And that's really where I began my kind of media tech career, which I've kind of been more or less in ever since.
So we were both Stuff alumni, so great that we're chatting again a few years on, and you moved across the ditch, of course, to Australia, and you've been at Seven now for a few years. So can you just recap, I guess, what have been kind of some of the key achievements that you and the team have achieved over the last few years?
Certainly. So I first came in from into Seven into Pacific Magazines, which is their publishing business. I had been working at Fairfax across the AFR and SMH, but I'd also worked for the Times of London, kind of when I was back in the UK for a few years. So I was pretty well grounded, I guess, in publishing. And it was quite an unusual situation to be in because Pacific Magazines, as well as Seven, had really outsourced its kind of digital journey to Yahoo. So effectively, they hadn't had their digital DNA for a decade. So I think it was about kind of 6 to 12 months when I joined Pacific Magazines, and it was a great opportunity actually to be able to establish that digital DNA from the ground up and really own that digital transformation. And that included setting up a new kind of video network, rolling out Agile across the enterprise. And it was the first time from a career perspective that I had actually owned user experience. And I also owned actual audience development as well. So putting kind of UX front and center and making that really important part of what we did really helped us to achieve our kind of audience growth goals. And then from there, I kind of transitioned over to the mothership at Seven Network. And basically, from there, initially I was in a bit of an advisory capacity where I did a review. We called it the Agile Target Operating System, where we reviewed the whole business and came up with a set of recommendations of how we could optimize the streaming platform, the teams, and ways of working. And then, I kind of came on board as Director of Product Solutions, which was effectively product technology. And from there, we really set a new product strategy. We had numerous issues. We had kind of siloed teams. There wasn't a clearly defined digital and product strategy. There was kind of fragmentation in the technology as well. So and a fairly disjointed approach again to user experience and the experience you had across those kind of different platforms.
And great that you put that user experience front of mind because, especially when it comes to streaming, it is so, it is so personalized and people go on there because they want specific things. So can you elaborate a little bit more on what you've done on the 7plus streaming service, especially in terms of, I guess, the AI and machine learning techniques that you've used to achieve that personalization?
Certainly. I mean, I guess where we started, as I kind of alluded to before, a lot of the individual applications actually didn't have feature parity across the board. And we actually had competing teams of, I don't know, as an example, the mobile team were competing against the web team to see who could get the most features in. So it was a pretty disconnected user experience. So really the hygiene phase of that first step was to define that what we called experience evolution and ensure that the user experience was unified across all of the platforms. But that also meant ensuring that there was feature parity across all those platforms. And, I guess there's direct and indirect personalization. So some of the first enablers before we got to the more kind of AI-driven personalization, we introduced, for example, mandatory sign-on. So before you could come into the platform and not actually have to sign up. Obviously, from not only from a feature perspective, but from a monetization perspective, it was important to get that. Once we got that, simple features such as watch list or continue watching. All of a sudden, it was giving the user the opportunity to, create a list of what they wanted to view, but easily pick up what they had been viewing. So there were kind of some of the basic foundations. And then we kind of, obviously knew the more direct personalization was needed. And some key areas where we saw opportunities were, a recommendations shelf, so recommended for you, the actual individual shelves. So, if there's a particular genre, such as, I know, a crime, we needed the ability to order that content in the propensity to view. And then there was also other areas, top picks for you and because you've watched and more like this and all these other kind of enabling kind of recipes to improve that kind of customer experience. But really, the choice of not only the partner, but also the technology was key in all of this. And there was definitely a tendency internally to look at the kind of bigger paid for platforms and the niche platforms in this regard that were kind of providing this technology to broadcasters and streamers globally. But an important part for us and our kind of product managers and engineers, we wanted to own part of that journey. I didn't want to outsource, I guess, the interesting problems to a third-party vendor. I wanted my own team to own that journey. And, we recognized that there might be some upfront time coming up to speed stuff. But, in terms of talent retention and keeping the best and hiring the best, that was definitely one of the goals of what we were trying to do.
So one of the partners for this was AWS. So can you give us a bit of an overview, I guess, on what that partnership entailed? As you said, you wanted your team to work on the more interesting things and outsource some of it. So what kind of products did you use from AWS and how did they align with those goals that you had for your streaming service?
Yeah, I mean, we had already ran a project with AWS, which was to do with FAST channels, so free ad-supported TV. And with AWS, they obviously provide a service, provide a bit of support, but it's really for you to get under the hood and kind of do that self-learning. And through that process, I think we were the first to adopt the technology. It was called Channel Assembly. We were the first to adopt the technology in APAC, and I think third globally. So I think part of it for us is, looking at those emerging technologies and where we can get quick results for the business. So going through that process, effectively, that was the start of our fast channel business. And in our recent 7 upfronts, that was called out as the third tier of our kind of programming strategy. That all came off the back of doing some experiments with fast channels, and we've now got 55 fast channels. Again, that came from doing a POC and then just really growing, experimenting, taking a test and learn approach. Did a very similar thing with AWS Personalize. Now, to begin with, it wasn't our actual first choice. Another big tech giant, let's just say, we kind of explored partnering with them, and they were looking to make us a global case study. And it was pretty enticing. But then we looked at the maturity of the platform and the local support, and it wasn't quite where we needed it to be. Unfortunately, I'd done such a hard sell internally. It took a bit of time to get everyone on to the next solution. But the approach taken to AWS was, we picked off a use case, which was the recommended for you, and we ran a proof of concept, and then we presented it to the main digital leaders in the business across marketing, commercial, and programming, and got their kind of buy-in. And that was really the start of the journey. And we're about 18 months into that journey now, and we're just kind of rolling out a new feature kind of every month or so. But I think one of the big things about it, it's not a set and forget when you release that kind of new capability. We try and get it to the best point we can do when we first release it, but tweaking the algorithm is really an iterative approach. And even the first kind of capabilities that we've released, a year ago, we're still tweaking and evolving. So, and I think, it's an interesting from an exec perspective of like being able to say, oh, here's going to be a 12-month roadmap of what we're going to deliver. We weren't able to do that. So part of it was kind of, hey, we're going to do a POC, look what we can do really quickly. But as soon as we did develop that kind of longer or more horizons of what we could deliver by when. And now we're pretty au fait with the tooling. I've probably gone too far out. I've got a 2-year roadmap of personalization to deliver across the platform, and we're very much value driven. So that's been really just picking off the pieces that are lowest investment, quickest returns.
Absolutely. And, sounds like you've got a lot more work on the cards as well with that 2-year roadmap. But just bring it back again to the partners there. I mean, how do you ensure that, the partners that you choose are scalable and, adaptable ultimately? Because, there is so much advancement coming along with AI and streaming technology. So how do you make sure that the partners you choose can go with you on that journey and scale up?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing for us, we probably have 4 or 5 key partners that we work with on a regular basis, and more or less the same partners for the last 2 to 3 years. With all of those partners, especially kind of, core engineering is done internally, but we kind of, have certain partners to help us kind of burst capacity when we need to. The key for us with all of those partners and teams, for us, they're just an extension of 7. Therefore, they're part of our culture and values. And that boils right down into the individual atomic teams where they might provide, engineers or experts into those teams. We treat them as if they're part of Seven. Now, there's some risk to that because, we work on a quarterly capacity agile model. Effectively, my product managers, tech leads are responsible, and delivery managers are responsible for that kind of, quarterly output deliverables and focus. That means, we work to a burn rate. Now, all the risk is on us. That means, there's no kind of, need to fill in a change request because that's gone over time and all that. My background is project management, but, first got into Agile kind of like, 10, 12 years ago, and have never looked back. There's no better way of doing product development than, having, and it's not just Agile. You got to know that there's gaps in Agile. It doesn't answer everything. So you just got to make sure you've got all the components in and around it. But I think a partner that is willing to adopt your ways of working and to have that agility and to work with you. And, I think it's in the name partner. We're not looking for vendors. We're looking for partners. They're the ones. I guess one of the key things, one of the things I love about AWS as an example, they're not just trying to sell me another bit of tech. They're actually trying to solve like my business problems and how I can grow the business. So I think that's and that's what all of our partners have in common. They're not just a tech vendor. They're a business partner.
Absolutely. The ones that can understand the problems and help you solve them are definitely the good ones. So, Will, how are customers then, your viewers, how is the audience reacting to the changes? Have you seen any improvement in engagement? How has customer feedback evolved? How's the old app score in the app store going?
Yeah, look, we've obviously had a few events in the last 2 or 3 years. It's really been rolling. We went from the Olympics, which got deferred by a year in 2021. Then we had the Winter Olympics. Then it was the Commonwealth Games, and then more recently, it's been the Women's World Cup. And during the Women's World Cup, we set Australia's streaming record as the biggest ever event. So it's kind of like it was awesome to have pretty much the whole of Australia come onto our platform and get really engaged. And we had so much positive feedback during those kind of high scale events because, it's not just about kind of providing that perfect experience. It's also about, doing it at scale. So from a personalization perspective, all the elements across the ecosystem are the best performing sites, more or less, of the personalized ones. And, we're seeing between like 30 to 40% growth off the back of that. And now, I guess for those areas, now we've seen that kind of growth from going from curated to personalized. It's about squeezing all the juice out of it, making sure, we're now looking for that kind of 2-3% growth. So even though we've achieved that growth, there's more to come. And then there's other areas we can kind of look at. And, we've definitely had even from a customer support team perspective, we've got more users on the platform than ever before. And the rate of kind of issues, whether it's coming in from a ticketing system or social, have dramatically dropped as well. So awesome user experience and personalized environment is key, but just making sure the basics work and making sure that it's as seamless and frictionless as possible is also important. And, doing that when you've got 1 million users on the platform, and, you've got 20,000 registrations per minute happening, that's when, you've got to make sure you've got the best tech talent in the business.
Indeed. And, great to hear that you did have that record, especially during the Women's World Cup, and seeing that pressure, I'm sure, on the system really come into play. So, with such a competitive environment, there's so many international and local players now in streaming. How do you, I guess, stay ahead of the competition when it comes to user experience, innovation? What do you look at?
Yeah, look, there's a few pieces of the pie. We're currently running Ignite, which is our innovation program. We actually run it over 3 weeks in terms of forming the teams, developing a prototype, and then coming in with a pitch. For this one, we've actually kind of put a bit of a women in tech feel to it. We have 7 teams who are all working on different prototypes. They've come from an ideation, then voting sessions from across the entire business. So, it's kind of, democratizing innovation as much as possible. But we actually picked the team leaders for each of those teams, and they're all kind of female leaders from across the business. And then we've got kind of 4 judges, like 3 from the business and then 1 from AWS. And they're all, again, female leaders. So we've put that lens on it. But in addition to that, the focus of the actual Ignite event is generative AI. I know, incredibly original there. But we've got a lot of sport coming onto the platform. So it's generative AI with the use case of sport. So with that, in September of next year, we've got kind of cricket coming on the platform, and then shortly after that, AFL. So I think it's the first time in streaming history in Australia where you've got the biggest winter sport and the biggest kind of summer sport free on a streaming service. So, obviously a lot of pressure to deliver against that for the teams. Other kind of areas of innovation, kind of mentioned before, if we see an emerging tech where we can see business value, we typically jump on it. We're a lean focused team, so you've got to make good bets, and we've been pretty good at making those bets. But I'm also a big fan of, not reinventing the wheel. I'm constantly talking to broadcasters and streamers. I don't know whether it's in London or New York, to see what others are up to. But we also, our product team, also conduct kind of market reviews as well. And pretty much every quarter, we're probably reviewing 2 to 3 streaming platforms out there, local competitors. I think it's important to keep an eye on local competitors, but our focus is more kind of international. And when we benchmark ourselves, we see ourselves as the most advanced AVOD platform in this market, and we've been able to achieve that really through keeping an eye out to those overseas streamers, but also innovating locally as well. And I guess what's quite well, I normally go to London 1 to 2 times a year, catch up with the likes of ITV and Channel 4. I've only been in streaming for 3 years or so, and I always expect to be getting insights and stuff for my roadmaps, and getting them to help me. But most of the time, I find it the way around, which I always think the UK is ahead of Australia in streaming, but actually Australia punch above above its weight for sure.
Absolutely. Well, great to hear. And I'm sure they take a lot of valuable lessons from you as well, having gone through the journey and learned from your mistakes along the way, I'm sure as well. So Will, finally then, I'd love to ask you, what do you think the future of streaming looks like? Is there any, I guess, emerging technologies, whether it's VR, AR, or, the metaverse, is it still a thing? Do you think any of those will make an impact, or is there any other area that you think, really we need to pay attention to for the future of streaming?
Look, I think there's things like generative AI, there's things coming out of our Ignite sessions that, certainly sparking my interest. There's what we can do, for the user experience and our consumers, but there's also all the stuff behind the scenes that help, I guess, operationalize and make us more effective. So an example of that, there's tooling where you can, I don't know, say if it's an AFL game, and this AI tooling can automatically pick out all the highlights and create all your short form and mini matches and stuff like that. So, there's automation and efficiency measures. So it's not just about, I guess, the consumer facing part. From a consumer perspective, you look at the new devices from Apple in terms of, VR and whatever else. And it's pretty impressive when, can sit in your lounge room and, have the screen in front of you 100 foot or whatever. So I think, deeper, more immersive experiences. But I think for one thing for us as well, is, connecting the user experience and advertising experience more. So there's a lot more opportunity, whether it's, making it kind of e-commerce shoppable experiences within the ads, or actual, you can actually do product placement into existing shows as well. So I really think the opportunities are unbound for the future. And with when we do, I guess, one of our innovation of events, we're not just looking to do some funky tech. We're trying to deliver business value through each initiative. So out of 7 initiatives, I would hope at least 6, live on the platform within the next 6 to 12 months.
Well, it sounds like you've got a very busy 6 months, if not 2 years ahead of you, with all of the innovation and things that you're planning for the future. Will Everett, Director of Product Solutions at 7 West Media, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much.